get into what those powers are with Congressman Pat Fallon. He represents Texas's 4th Congressional District. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee, which, of course, is going to take a very important role in this impeachment inquiry. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Hey, Vance, how are you?
I'm doing well, sir. Tell me, and I asked Marjorie Taylor Greene this yesterday. I'll ask you as well. What changes now? What powers does Congress have access to now that Kevin McCarthy has made this announcement?
Well, it helps us focus, and we're going to get additional resources to do this investigation. And I do think this is warranted, considering the evidence that we have already uncovered, Vince. I mean, if you and I were talking at this time last year, I would have said to you with confidence that we could prove $1 million of foreign monies that went to the Biden family. Now I can say that's $30 million because we've had the power of subpoena over the last 8 months. And to put it again in historic context, when Watergate occurred, the break-in occurred in June of 1972, and President Nixon didn't resign until August of 74. So honestly, you could argue that this investigation is really just beginning.
Absolutely. Now, the impeachment process, just to dwell on the powers for a moment, it supposedly puts Congress at what I've heard a bunch of lawmakers say is at the apex of its investigative power. But isn't that entirely contingent on whether the courts play ball? Because if the Biden administration says, hey, we're not sending you what you want, then it becomes up to the courts, and the courts have to decide, does Congress actually have some sort of extra power here, correct?
Yeah, I mean, and I would hope that they do, because that's kind of what I think the precedent has been. And this is, and again, also, this just brings me no joy. And I would never have played ball with this, if you will, and been a supporter. I'm just going where the evidence leads us. I do not want to go on any kind of like revenge tour,
right,
or just do this out of spite or for political reasons. And quite frankly, there's a very good argument to be made. I personally want Joe Biden to be the Democratic nominee because I think he's going to lose in the November election next year.
Yes.
He's the weakest candidate they can field. Well, Kamala Harris would be weaker, but he's one of the weakest they can field. So selfishly, I don't want him to be removed from office between now and then.
Yeah, I know. I've heard some speculation this morning from even lefties suggesting that, well, maybe some Democrats will start to leak against Biden here because they might see it as an opportunity to get rid of him, to replace him as the nominee. It's kind of a weird environment we're in. That's how bad this guy is.
Right. But you know what? My personal preferences are immaterial. I have to follow the United States Constitution. And if I already believe in my heart of hearts, we've had discussions about this before on your program, that the preponderance of the evidence, it is more likely than not that Hunter Biden was the bagman and Joe Biden was bribed and he gained financial windfall for selling access and peddling influence and access. So if it's more likely than not that that's the case, then we have to. It's our constitutional duty to investigate further and then open an inquiry.
So I'm going to get into this coming up on the program, but the White House defense of this, and of course the media's dutiful defense that they take from the White House, is that there is no evidence that Joe Biden profited from his son's business deals. I'm going to quote from CNN today in a quote fact check that they put together. They say House Republicans have not presented any proof that Joe Biden ever profited off his son's business deals or was influenced while in office by his son's business dealings. Now, go ahead and address that, if you will.
Vince, using his son's own words in emails, saying that dad takes too much of my money and 10% for the big guy. Now, the Democrats will argue, well, you can't prove that the big guy is Joe Biden. Really? Well, because Hunter's business associates called him the big guy, and a guy named Mykola Zlochevsky, who was the CEO of Burisma, the energy giant in Ukraine, didn't know those guys, and he called them the big guy as well in the leaked and now public FD 1023. Not to mention the FD 1023 lays out the fact that Joe Biden, in fact, was given $5 million by Zlochevsky to make the prosecutor, Victor Shokin, quote unquote, go away.
Yes.
Well, that's exactly what happened. So the Democrats now have to say that the 1023 is a bunch of garbage or it's just a claim, although the FBI has to admit that the source of this same document is highly reliable. We've paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we worked with him for over 10 years, and all the information he's ever given us has actually checked out. Furthermore, what happened, what physically happened, is we're not making up the fact that Jeffrey Pyatt, the ambassador to Ukraine, called Mykola Zlochevsky, corrupt. That was Obama's ambassador. we're not making up the fact that there was a board meeting of Burisma who President Biden's son, Hunter, sat on,
Yes.
and Burisma was paying him $1 million a year. That's a fact. And that he had a conversation with, and Hunter said to him, Dad, Burisma, they need our help. And then his father went and did exactly that, got Victor Shokin fired.
Also, I should say that what you're seeing here is a far cry from Joe Biden is unaware of his son's business dealings. That's what the original claim was. That's what Biden said on stage. Now, you've noticed that they're driving the goalposts all around the stadium. And right now, they're pretty ridiculous because at its most basic, if we were to give Joe Biden even the benefit of the doubt here in any capacity, at its most basic, if Hunter Biden profited from Joe's actions, doesn't that count as blatant corruption?
I would think that it was. And certainly now what the Democrats would say is, or the apologists for the regime, if you will, that, well, just because Hunter is corrupt and Hunter did things wrong doesn't mean his dad did. Well, okay, well, his dad was coddling him every step of the way. And every time all this information always corroborates what we already know. It never conflicts with it.
But Joe Biden's not Mr. Magoo, although he acts like it occasionally in public. He's at this. He goes to these dinners at Cafe Milano. He accompanies his son and his business partners. He writes in handwritten notes to his son's business partners how grateful he is that they're working with Hunter. He's on phone calls on a routine basis. According to all of this testimony that you in Congress have received, that Joe Biden would join phone calls with the business partners. Hunter Biden would be on Air Force Two on multiple occasions and then would also have meetings with business partners captured on photograph. It's like, it's unbelievable that they can stand there and say, oh, well, Biden, he loves his son. That's the explanation the White House is giving today.
He blatantly lied. In 2019, candidate Biden told the American public, I had no knowledge of my son's business dealings and I never met with any of the people. He knew that was just blatantly false.
Yes.
He had dinner with them. He gave them tours of the White House. He took pictures with them. He sent them notes and correspondence, as you just mentioned. Let's do a quick, for instance, for your listeners. Elena Baturina, okay, the former First Lady of Moscow, the former wife of the mayor of Moscow, Yuri Zolkov. Zolkov was by name, by the American ambassador pointed out as one of the most corrupt people in Russia, okay? She just so happens to give $3.5 million to Rosemont, one of the shell companies of Hunter Biden. $3.5 million. A few months later, she has dinner with Joe Biden. And then when some of the Russian oligarchs are sanctioned after the invasion of Ukraine, her name is left off that list. It's just a coincidence, I get.
We get a lot of those, don't
but
we?
There's scores of them. That's the whole problem. If it's just one thing, okay, maybe it is a coincidence, but it's this constant. With Mazimov and his buddies over in Kazakhstan wire $142,300 to Hunter. Okay. Exactly that amount. The very next day, Hunter wires $142,300 to a dealership and buys himself a Porsche. Now, people aren't giving away money for free. Nobody can explain to us what that money was for, other than, but you know what? They also happen to have dinner with the vice president a few months after they gave Hunter money.
Right.
You see, this is, I think, in a court of law, you can start to build a case to prove that, yes, it was for services rendered or about to be.
I mean, there's a text message now famous, WhatsApp message, famous among people who have their eyes open. The media has tried not cover most of this. Quote, I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. Tell the director that I would like to resolve this now before it gets out of hand, and now means tonight. And Z, if I get a call or text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. What does that message mean, if not to serve as evidence of Joe Biden's involvement?
If I were Joe Biden and I literally did nothing wrong and my son might have acted in a rogue fashion, I would say, I'm just telling you what I would do. I would say, whoa, I wasn't there. I can prove it. Here's my geolocations. I'll open it up and give Apple permission to share them. I wasn't in that room. Look, wherever the hell I was somewhere else. So it was my son, love him dearly, but he was spouting off. But they're not doing that, are they?
No.
And in fact, if I was accused of all this stuff, the first thing I'd do is open up my bank records. I would, redact your account numbers and some other things. But look at, I never benefited at all. Well, you know what? We think that Hunter Biden gave his dad a debit card, and his dad just, had a spending spree on it. They haven't done anything. If they didn't do anything wrong, they should share the bank records, and we should have this thing over with forthwith. But they won't do that. In fact, they lawyer up and do the exact opposite and attack us. Deny, counter accuse.
I'd like to, and I know you know the details, which is I'm so grateful for, but I feel like there's a lot of Republican lawmakers who get asked the question, what is the evidence? Well, we have to do this investigation to get the evidence. It's like, no, stupid. That's not how you answer the question. The question is, there's a mountain of evidence. Of course we have to keep digging here because all of the evidence points to utter corruption on the part of the Biden family, starting with all of that public deception, Congressman Pat Fallon on with us today. From 51 intelligence officials lying about Hunter Biden's laptop, Joe Biden retelling that lie, standing on stage and using it against Donald Trump, lying about taking money from China. He straight up lied to the American people. My son never took money from China. Lying about not discussing business with his son. He was frequently photographed, and I went through all of that. Just using pseudonyms during his time as vice president of the United States. Robert L. Peters, Robin Ware. People don't do this unless they're trying to hide something from the public.
And we really have to take a look and, dial it back. What was Joe Biden's thought process? What was he thinking about in 2014-15? He thought his political career was over. He was grabbing with both hands. It was Hunter in overdrive, and that's why they got sloppy. If he had never run for office again, probably nobody would have uncovered this stuff because he would have been a has-been and he would have gotten away with it.
Right.
But because Hillary Clinton, who was going to be the nominee? In 2014-15, you asked any Democrat who was going to be the nominee. They were going to say Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee.
That's right.
She was going to whoop any Republican, and she was going to be president for 8 years. And Joe Biden's certainly not going to run for office at the age of whatever he'll be in 24, 81, 82 years old.
Smart.
So it was over.
Yes, it was.
That's why they got sloppy.
They didn't realize that Donald Trump would be in office and would notice this corruption in Ukraine and then raise it in public and say, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? And that began a series of panicked events that are still shaking our republic to its core to this very day. It's amazing what's happening. Well, please keep up the good work here, Congressman Pat Fallon, and really appreciate our conversations every time we have them. Thank you, sir.